In this ICAM video, I'll be talking you through a visualization of dog population dynamics. Understanding how dog populations function can help with designing an effective intervention for managing the population. This is a visualization of basic dog population dynamics. It shows the different subpopulations of dogs or states, and it also shows processes. Demographic processes are part of population dynamics. They are the way dogs transition from one state to another, including birth, death, and movement out of the home, either temporarily in the form of roaming or permanently when given away, sold, or abandoned. So let's explore this visualization further by starting with just one state and building it back up again. When people think about dog population management, their minds are usually focused on these dogs, the unowned dogs on the street, the classic stray dog. But when we see a dog on a street, a stray dog, it may actually be any one of these four different states. So here we get to question our first assumption, that all roaming dogs are unowned, feral, or wild dogs. In fact, in most countries, most of the stray dogs, the roaming dogs, have an owner, but they're currently roaming unsupervised, and even those without a single referral household may not be entirely unowned. They may be community dogs, with more than one household offering some form of care in the form of food, shelter, or even limited veterinary care. But why do these distinctions of dog type or dog state matter? Well, for dog population management, we want to know the source of these dogs, because dog population management cannot only deal with the roaming dogs of today. That's just the symptom of our dog problem. They need to work at the root cause, or the source of these different dogs. And this is where we get to test out another assumption that often turns out to be mistaken. People may think that the principal or only source of these roaming dogs is breeding of unowned or community dogs on the streets, and that these current roaming dogs are the source of the next generation of roaming dogs. Breeding may well be happening, but it's not the only source of these dogs. In fact, because the mortality of puppies on the street can be high, the process of recruitment, as shown by these arrows, is low. Now, recruitment is the process by which puppies make it to adulthood and become part of the breeding population themselves. Breeding by unowned or community dogs may be very unsuccessful, and hence it's a minor source of the next generation of roaming dogs. And that's why sterilising just the dogs currently on the street is very unlikely to lead to extinction of the roaming dog population. Although it may reduce density of roaming dogs and prevent the suffering and dying of many puppies, there will be other sources of roaming dogs in action. So what are these other sources? This is when we need to start to bring in the owned dog population more clearly. There are three processes that can act as sources of roaming dogs. Abandonment and unsupervised roaming of owned dogs can be very significant processes that bring dogs onto the street. Owned dogs can also be lost accidentally. And if we bring the breeding of owned dogs into the picture here, we can see how abandonment in particular can be linked to breeding in owned dogs, as unwanted puppies and pregnant females can be particularly at risk of abandonment. Note that the arrows for recruitment within the owned dog population are darker than in the unowned or community owned. This is because these dogs are like to have better access to resources and so breed more successfully. Note also that the owned roaming have the darkest arrows of all. That is because not only are they given resources by their owners, so puppy survival tends to be better, but also if they are roaming, they have a far greater chance of getting pregnant than confined owned dogs. We should also note that there are counter processes in play. Opposing abandonment, we have adoption, and to roaming, we have confinement and good resourcing by owners, meaning that dogs have less motivation to roam as their needs are met at home, and lost dogs can be reunited with their owners. Although confinement might not be required in all locations, an increase in the processes of adoption and reuniting is always desired. There are also processes between unowned and community dog states that are worth considering, in the form of communities taking on responsibility for dogs or becoming disengaged. Community dogs are likely to receive more resources from their community owners and hence have better welfare. They're also very likely to be easier to access for vaccination and sterilisation, thanks to building a better relationship with people. So the process of engaging communities to become more responsible over dogs on their streets may also be something to target through dog population management, whilst disengaging the community from their dogs should be avoided. Note that it is difficult to draw a distinct line between unowned and community dogs. They exist more on a continuum, between the extreme of a feral dog with no purposeful connection to people, through to a named and valued community dog with several households providing daily care. Dogs that have been accidentally lost and reuniting with their owners never happens will move into the state of either an unowned or community dog, dependent on how quickly they are noticed and whether they are offered care by local people. One aspect of dog population dynamics that often comes to the forefront of discussions is the role that shelters, holding facilities or rehoming centres can play. Intake to these facilities can be via catching dogs from the streets or direct relinquishment by owners. These should only provide temporary housing for dogs before they are adopted or euthanized due to ill health or behaviour problems that prevent them from being rehomed. Dogs should not be housed in shelters long term. The acquisition of owned dogs may be important to explore because dogs acquired by different processes may be at differing risks of abandonment. In particular, the purchase of dogs from pet shops and markets, whether physical or online, may involve dogs that have been bred in suboptimal conditions, such as puppy farms, leading to poorly socialised or sick puppies that may be at a greater risk of relinquishment or abandonment. Increasing adoption from rehoming centres is also a common focus for dog population management interventions where such facilities already exist. It should be noted that the purchase of dogs displayed here are from three broad sources: from homes where an owned dog has had a litter of puppies, from breeders who produce several litters per year for business purposes, and from pet shops or markets. These may well be best broken down into more detailed substates. For example, there may be specific outlets or breeders that can be identified within communities that are producing puppies that are either of particularly good or poor quality, and these would be tackled differently by a dog population management intervention. The final process that completes this basic model of dog population dynamics is death. You can see that the arrows here are of different thicknesses for different dog states, who may have different mortality risks. It should be noted that death is inevitable for all dogs, but suffering does not have to be inevitable. Humane euthanasia is an important part of dog population management, and access to vets that can perform euthanasia using humane methods will be essential for rehoming centres, owners and carers to protect dogs from suffering. I hope you found this explanation of basic dog population dynamics useful. Please see Part 2 for an exploration of how dog population management interventions can alter dog population dynamics.